Dear students, in this lecture we are going to study the history of Gupta dynasty. So Gupta dynasty is also known as, or the period during which Gupta dynasty existed is also known as golden period of Indian history, golden age. So golden age, why golden age? Because India prospered by leaps and bounds. Culturally, it prospered culturally because India could not expand territorially because it is already such a big kingdom, but it expanded culturally. So we will see that what was Gupta dynasty, why it was known as golden age. So let's see what was Gupta dynasty. In 185 BCE, before Common Era, the Mauryan Empire collapsed. So you know that Mauryan Empire was a great empire centered around Magad, ruling from Patliputra. So Magad Empire collapsed in 185 BC. After which the country or the entire territory was divided into smaller kingdoms. So after Mauryans you had kingdoms like Shung, Kanv, and you also had foreign powers. Some foreign powers from Greece, from Persia. So they have come and conquered lands of India and they had started to rule. So Mauryans were gone, and instead of Mauryans, small kingdoms had taken a place throughout India. So for nearly 500 years, the various states warred with each other. So these small states, they were fighting with each other to replace or to take the center stage. See, there are small kingdoms, but there is not a single big kingdom. Mauryans, what was so special about the Mauryans? That they controlled the entire country, that they did not allow any other kingdom to flourish. But after they are gone, only small kingdoms exist. There is not one powerful big kingdom. So that's why these small kingdoms, they are fighting amongst each other to gain the control, to gain political supremacy. And it is the result of this 500 years of fight. So they kept on fighting. One empire gone, the other comes. So at the end of 500 years after the Mauryans are gone, we see the emergence of a new empire. A new empire arose around 320 CE, Common Era CE. So it was founded by, the empire was founded by, or the dynasty was founded by Sri Gupta. Sri Gupta. And the dynasty rose to fame with rulers like Chandragupta Maurya, Samudragupta. So these are the rulers which took this dynasty to glory. Founder was Sri Gupta. Sri Gupta, the founder of the dynasty, was once a vassal under the Kushan Empire. Now, what is this Kushan Empire? So, when Mauryans were gone, so this is India. So, when Mauryans were gone, tribes from China, they entered India, they captured Western India, and they started to rule. They founded their own kingdom. So that kingdom was known as Kushan. So these were basically Chinese people who came to India, occupied land, converted to Buddhism so that they can mingle with Indian population, and slowly, gradually they became Indian, but they were basically Chinese people. So these Gupta dynasty, or the founder of the Gupta dynasty, this Sri Gupta, once upon a time he was a vassal. So you can say he was a small landlord working under Kushan Empire. So he was just an employee, but gradually he found his own empire. The Gupta Empire spread to large parts of northern India, central and small parts of southern India. So this Gupta Empire, it spread to large parts of northern India. That's why we remember this empire today. We talk about this empire today because it occupied large parts of India. The 5th century Sanskrit poet Kalidas credits the Guptas with having conquered about 21 kingdoms. So Kalidas was a great Sanskrit scholar which existed during this period, and he has written in his books, in his stories, in his novels, that Guptas were very powerful, they were militarily very strong, and they had conquered 21 kingdoms. This is what Kalidas tells us. 21 kingdoms, that means they defeated many great kingdoms, because as I already told you, after the Mauryans had gone, India was divided into smaller kingdoms. So if you defeat smaller kingdoms, that means you take that territory under your control, your kingdom becomes larger and larger, and that's how Gupta Empire became so large. During Gupta age, remarkable progress was witnessed in different spheres of human life, like polity, that means politics, political philosophies, economy, culture, and society. So that's why I already told you that Gupta period is also known as golden age of Indian history. Why? Because during this time period, India witnessed progress in polity, in economy, in medicine, in literature, that means everything that enriches your culture. So India witnessed the growth, and hence it is known as golden age. Now what was the extent of Gupta Empire? So you can see the map. The area shown in pink color is the Gupta dynasty. So you can see very clearly Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Gujarat, and even parts of Pakistan, the present day Pakistan. So this was all under control of Gupta Empire. But one thing is very certain, that Gupta Empire was not as large as Mauryan Empire. Why? Because if you see the map of Mauryan dynasty, they also controlled this part. Almost the entire Indian subcontinent. But Guptas, they did not control that vast area. So that is what it is said, that Gupta Empire was not as large as Mauryan Empire. So that's for sure. Gupta Empire originally began in Gangetic basins of Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. So this river Ganga flows here. So Gangetic basins, because of these rivers, because of these basins, agriculture was at a boom. Agriculture was growing rapidly. People were cultivating enough food to feed themselves and also to trade. So trade and commerce was booming. So that's why this became the political epicenter of the country, Gangetic Basin. And it is there that Gupta Empire originally began. They chose Allahabad as their seat of power. That means they chose Allahabad as capital and not Patliputra. Please remember, Mauryans were ruling from Patliputra, Magad. So Patliputra, or modern day Patna, was acting as the political capital of the country. But when Gupta dynasty took over, they chose to rule from Allahabad. That means their rulers were living in Allahabad, not in Patliputra. The palaces were made in Allahabad, not in Patliputra. How do we know? We know this because an inscription in Allahabad is found. Inscription. The king has made a pillar and got it inserted in Allahabad. So reading that pillar makes things very clear. So Allahabad inscription, please remember this term very carefully. Allahabad inscription is related to Gupta Empire. It was composed in praise of Samudragupta. So Samudragupta is one of the rulers that occurred in this dynasty. So Allahabad inscription is basically talking about Samudragupta, And in that inscription, we get to know so many things about Gupta Empire. So that Allahabad inscription was actually composed by a poet known as Hari Sena. So Hari Sena was the court poet of Samudragupta, and Samudragupta is the one of the rulers of Gupta Empire. So this proves that Allahabad was their capital. That's why they are planting their inscription there, and details the extent of Gupta kingdom. So by reading this Allahabad inscription, details of Gupta kingdom or the boundaries of Gupta kingdom are known to us. Soon the Guptas became the masters of land between Bengal and Arabian Sea. So Bengal, not Bangladesh but Bengal. So from here to Arabian Sea, you can see this is Arabian Sea, coast of Arabian Sea. So this entire land came under their control. So soon the Guptas became the master of land between Bengal and Arabian Sea, and from plains of Punjab, from here, plains of Punjab to the Vindhyas in the south. What is this Vindhya? Vindhya is a mountain range which geographically divides the country into north and south. So this mountain range, Vindhya mountain range, acts as a geographical divide. So this divides country between two parts, North India and South India. So it is very clear that Gupta Empire was completely North India based. It did not venture too much into South India, as it is very clear. So their boundary was Vindhya. That means they could not extend their influence in South India. Sri Gupta, the first ruler or the founder. Sri Gupta was the founder of Gupta dynasty. He was the feudatory of the Kushans. So I already told you that Kushans were the Chinese tribes who have settled in India and founded their own kingdom. Sri Gupta and his successor Ghatotkach. So Ghatotkach was the successor of Sri Gupta. Successor means after Sri Gupta, Ghatotkach became the next ruler. So both of them are described as Maharaja or the great king, while the next king Chandragupta I is called a Maharaja Dhiraj. That means king of the great kings. What does this shows? This shows that Sri Gupta, the founder, and his successor Ghatotkach, they were not extremely powerful. They were powerful, of course, because they were kings, but they were just king like the other ones. Nothing special about them. So they were referred to simply as king. Whereas the next in line, Chandragupta I, he is referred to as king of king. That means he must have done something great. He must have achieved so many things. That's why he is addressed with much respect. So key takeaways: who is the founder? Sri Gupta is founder. What was the title given to him? Maharaja. So what was the title given to Chandragupta I? So the title given to him was not Maharaja, but even greater than Maharaja. He is not a simple Maharaja. He is Maharaja Dhiraj. That means king of the kings. Ghatotkach was the son of Sri Gupta and he succeeded him after his death. So Ghatotkach succeeded Sri Gupta. Both are known as Maharaja, and we don't have much details about Ghatotkach. In fact, we know about Ghatotkach and Sri Gupta by reading Allahabad inscription. Please remember this fact. Very important. Allahabad inscription related to Gupta dynasty. The next ruler was Chandragupta. So Chandragupta I, the founder of the Gupta dynasty, we have already discussed, was Sri Gupta. But the first important king of Gupta dynasty was Chandragupta I. Chandragupta I is the first important king. Why this is? So he is called the first important king because we already saw that the first two kings, Sri Gupta and Ghatotkach, both were referred as Maharaja, whereas Chandragupta is referred as Maharaja Dhiraja. That's why he is the first important king. The next fact that you must know about him is that he married a Lichhavi Kumar Devi. So married a Lichhavi Kumar Devi means Lichhavi princess. Lichhavi princess whose name was Kumar Devi. Now Lichhavi was a very powerful kingdom situated next to Magad. So Lichhavi was very powerful. So he married the princess of a powerful kingdom, because of which his political position was strengthened. What was the name of the princess? It was named Kumara Devi. The Guptas were possibly Vaishya caste. That means the caste to which they belonged was Vaishya caste. So as you already know, caste system. So 4 castes were prevalent in ancient India, and also now caste system has not gone away. So 4 castes: Brahmin, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra. So Brahmin, priest caste, priestly class; Kshatriya, warrior, I mean those who became rulers, those who became military generals, so that class, Kshatriya class. Vaishya castes were basically merchants and farmers. So Guptas belong to Vaishya caste, and hence marriage in a Kshatriya family gave them prestige, because the princess of Lichhavi was a Kshatriya. So people from Vaishya caste, if they marry people from higher caste, their position or social status is enhanced. So that is what happened with Chandragupta I. So Chandragupta I was the first real important king of this family, as he started the Gupta era in 320 AD. Please remember, this is very important. Who started Gupta era? Chandragupta I started, not Sri Gupta. Starting an era means what? He started a calendar, Gupta calendar. So when you become a king, you do something to commemorate the day you sat on the throne. So Chandragupta I also did the same thing. So when he sat on the throne, he said that from today I announce the beginning of a new era. So that era will be known as Gupta era. So Gupta era started in 320 AD when Chandragupta I sat on his throne. Chandragupta I took the title Maharaja Dhiraj. So we have already discussed Maharaja Dhiraj means king of the kings. The next ruler is Samudragupta. And let me tell you something about this person, Samudragupta. He is responsible for extending Gupta Empire to its peak territorially. I am saying territorially. That means by defeating other kings. So he set on a mission to expand the territory of Gupta Empire. He was the son of Chandragupta I, and he is considered to be the most powerful ruler of Gupta dynasty. He is most powerful because he won so many battles. He defeated so many other rulers. That's why he is considered to be the most powerful ruler of Gupta dynasty. He was a very ambitious ruler who engaged in large-scale territorial expansion. So when the Gupta Empire began, they were mainly concentrated in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh. But gradually they expanded at a rapid rate. So it was Samudragupta who occupied the remaining portions or the remaining parts and included them in Gupta dynasty, or the territory of Gupta dynasty was increased to a great height during the reign of Samudragupta. What is being said about Samudragupta? That Samudragupta never knew any defeat. That means he was never defeated in any battle, and he conquered east till Assam, west till eastern Afghanistan, north till Kashmir, and south till Tamil Nadu. That means almost the entire Indian subcontinent was made part of Gupta Empire by the efforts of Samudragupta, because he started to defeat and conquer those parts which were not included in Gupta dynasty. He used to attack them, defeat them, and then merge them, so that the territory could expand, the kingdom could expand. This was done by Samudragupta. Because of this, he is also known as Napoleon of India. Who was Napoleon? Napoleon was a French general, military general, who also wanted to make France great. He wanted to expand France, and he was never defeated except a single battle in which he died. So Samudragupta was also never defeated. That's why Samudragupta is known as Napoleon of India. Please remember, very important question. Very, very, very important. So whenever we will come across a fact which is very important, which has to be remembered, I will highlight then and there on. So you please be mindful of the fact that whenever your teacher says that this is an important fact, you have to take that seriously. You can go now and check that how many times this question has been asked. You can simply go and Google who is known as the Napoleon of India. You will find that this question has been asked in many different exams. Samudragupta was a trained musician, and he issued coins depicting him playing the instrument of veena. So he was a trained musician. You can see this coin. So he issued coins in which he can be seen playing veena. He is sitting with veena in his lap. So veena is a type of musical instrument. So these kind of questions has been asked. Which musical instrument can Samudragupta be seen playing on his coins? Veena. The next question can be, which ruler is depicted playing veena on his own coins? So it is Samudragupta. So you have to understand the facts, remember them, and when required, recollect them. He also composed poetry and is named Kaviraj. Kaviraj means Mr. Poet. So he also composed poetry. So Samudragupta, he was such an accomplished person. He was a great warrior who was never defeated. He also composed music. He played veena, and he also composed poetry. So he was such a great personality, versatile personality, and that's why he is said to be the most powerful ruler. His court poet Hari Sen, so you can see that he is interested so much in music and poetry. So he had a court poet Hari Sen. So he asked his court poet Hari Sen that please write a history of my family. I want to construct a pillar. On that pillar, I want the family history to be written. So you create a poem, you create a beautiful poetry in which you mention about my forefathers, you mention about me. So this is the instruction given by Samudragupta. So Samudragupta gave this instruction to his court poet Hari Sen, and Hari Sen then composed a inscription which is written in a pillar located at Allahabad. So that is known as Allahabad inscription, and it is this pillar, by reading this pillar, that we get to know about the Gupta dynasty. So Allahabad pillar is the most important source of inscription about the Gupta dynasty people. Now Samudragupta was a staunch Hindu and conducted Ashwamedh Yajna. So if question is ki which religion did Samudragupta follow, so he was a staunch Hindu. He was neither a Jain nor a Buddhist. He was a staunch Hindu who used to conduct Ashwamedh Yajna. Samudragupta granted permission to the Buddhist king Meghvarman. Very important. Meghvarman was the king of Ceylon. Ceylon means Sri Lanka. Back then, Sri Lanka was known as Ceylon. So Sri Lanka had become Buddhist by then. You already know the story of King Ashoka, who had sent his son and daughter to spread Buddhism in Sri Lanka. So when Gupta dynasty was ruling in India, the Buddhist king of Sri Lanka, whose name was Meghvarman, he requested Samudragupta for permission to build monasteries at Bodh Gaya, because Bodh Gaya is a very sacred place for Buddhists, because Lord Buddha attained enlightenment there. So the king of Sri Lanka, his name you must remember, Meghvarman, asked Samudragupta that will you allow me to build monastery at Bodh Gaya, and Samudragupta gave him the permission. That means though he was a Hindu himself, but he respected other religions as well. The Shak and Kushan of Western India were under his subjugation. So who are these people, Shak and Kushan? Kushan I already explained to you were Chinese tribes who after the decline of Mauryan civilization had come and occupied Western India. So these Kushans, they were ruling from Punjab to Mathura. So this was their area of rule. Whereas these Shaka people, they were ruling from Afghanistan to Gujarat. This was the condition. Foreigners were ruling. But Samudragupta, that means Indian Napoleon of India, he defeated these foreign powers. The Shak and Kushan kingdoms of Western India were brought under control, were subjugated. Samudragupta was succeeded by his son Chandragupta II. Please remember, he is Chandragupta II, not Chandragupta I. Chandragupta I we have already seen. So now let's see the life and times of Chandragupta II. He was the son of Samudragupta and came to power in 380 AD, exactly 60 years after his grandfather started the Gupta era. Now understand something. Up till now we have seen three great rulers. First was, if you talk about great rulers, Sri Gupta because he is the founder. Fine. The second was Chandragupta because we don't have much idea about Ghatotkacha, so we can't say whether he was great or not. Chandragupta, the second one. The third is Samudragupta. Now, up till now, the Guptas are busy in territorial expansion. That means they are more interested in expanding their sphere of influence, their territory. But now comes a king who is interested in cultural upliftment, cultural growth. His name is Chandragupta II. So Chandragupta II was the son of Samudragupta and came to power in 380 AD, exactly 60 years after his grandfather started the Gupta era. So who is his grandfather? His grandfather is Chandragupta I. So he was named after his grandfather. So his grandfather was Chandragupta I, he is Chandragupta II. Under his reign, Gupta dynasty reached its cultural peak and also saw territorial expansion. So this is important to note that cultural peak, cultural upliftment was accelerated, was given a boost by this ruler, Chandragupta II. He defeated Shakas of Malwa and Gujarat. Shak, these are basically Greek powers, Greek tribes who had ruled India for more than 100 years. So after defeating Shakas of Malwa, Malwa means parts of Madhya Pradesh, including Rewa, Jabalpur, Sanchi, all these areas, basically Malwa. So he brought Malwa and Gujarat under his control. Ujjain is located in Malwa. So after this, he made Ujjain as his second capital. Before that, Ujjain was not accessible to these guys because these portions were under control of Shakas. But now that Shakas are defeated, so he makes Ujjain as his second capital. And after making Ujjain as his second capital, he assumed the title of Vikramaditya Sakari. Sakari Shaka, though killer of Shaka. So Sakari means the one who kills the Shaka. Vikramaditya, the great king who defeated Shaka. So he chose to be called Vikramaditya Sakari, meaning the great Vikramaditya who is the killer of Shaka. Now, why did he chose the name Vikramaditya? He already had such a beautiful name, Chandragupta I. He took the name Vikramaditya because in ancient Ujjain, there was a very famous king whose name was Vikramaditya. So he chose that name so that he also becomes close to his people of Ujjain. To make people of Ujjain happy, he chose the name of their ancient king. He is credited with the maintaining in his court 9 gems. So in his court, there were 9 intellectuals, 9 great scholars. So they were known as Navratnas. Nav means 9. 9 gems, 9 intellectual people. So he used to have them in their court. So he was interested in cultural upliftment. He was interested in poetry, he was interested in music, he was interested in astronomy, he was interested in architecture. So for that he had assembled 9 great intellectuals in his court. So they were known as 9 gems. So we will see about these 9 gems in a bit detail. So these are 9 gems. Fahyan visited India during his reign. The other important event that you need to remember about him is Fahyan was a Chinese traveler who visited India during his rule, Chandragupta's rule. So there are 2 famous Chinese travelers to have visited India. First is Fahyan. After him came Yuan Sang. So Fahyan came during Chandragupta II's period, and Yuan Sang came about almost like 200 years later, 250 years later. He came when India was ruled by King Harshvardhana. So remember, these are very commonly asked questions. So Fahyan visited the court of which ruler? So Chandragupta II's, because Chandragupta was the ruler back then. His exploits as Chandra has been mentioned on Qutub Iron Pillar, Delhi. So in Qutub Minar complex, there is an iron pillar of Mehrauli. So this iron pillar of Mehrauli was actually built on the orders of Chandragupta II. So on that pillar, he has got his story printed. So if somebody asks that iron pillar of Qutub Minar, or let's say iron pillar of Delhi or iron pillar of Mehrauli, is associated with which king or which dynasty, then you will have to say Chandragupta II of Gupta dynasty. So now let's see Navratnas of Vikramaditya. Now you will say who this Vikramaditya is. Please remember, Vikramaditya was the title taken by Chandragupta II because he occupied Ujjain. Ujjain had an ancient ruler named Vikramaditya. So he also took that title, that from today onwards people will call me Vikramaditya. So he had 9 intellectual personalities in his court. So those 9 people together, they were known as Navratnas, 9 gems. So let's understand who these 9 gems were. The first was Kalidas. So Kalidas was a Sanskrit scholar and poet in the court of Chandragupta II, who is also known as Vikramaditya. Now why is Kalidas famous? Why do we know his name? Why do we say that he is a great scholar or great Sanskrit writer? He must have done something great. So he has written very great plays. So you have to remember the name of these plays, that who is the writer. You don't have to remember the subject matter, but anyways you have to remember the name of the plays written by Kalidas. First is Abhigyan Sakuntalam. Abhigyan Sakuntalam is basically the love story of King Dushyant and Shakuntala. The second book that Kalidas wrote was Malvikagni Mitram. So Malvikagni Mitram is the love story of King Agni Mitra and Malvika. So all these are rulers of Ujjain. So they had ruled Ujjain in some point in time. That's why Kalidas knows about these people. That's why he is writing about them. He have heard about them. So Agni Mitra was the ruler of Ujjain, belonging to which dynasty? If you are preparing for exam, you must realize that he was a ruler of Shunga dynasty. The third book that he wrote was Vikramo Vashyam, the study of or the love story of Vikram and Urvashi, Vikramo Urvashyam. Kalidas was also the author of two famous Sanskrit poems. So these are stories, or you can say play. So they used to write play and people used to conduct those plays. So he was like Shakespeare. You can say he's the Indian Shakespeare, Kalidas. So Kalidas was also the author of two famous Sanskrit poems. First is Raghu Vansham. The second is Kumar Sambhavam. So you have to remember the name of these, because questions have been asked that who is the author of Malvikagni Mitram, who is the author of Abhigyan Sakuntalam. So you will have to understand that Kalidas. The second gem. So here we are discussing Navratnas, or the 9 gems. So 9 gems of Vikramaditya, who is also known as Chandragupta II. So the second gem was Vetal Bhatt. So why is Vetal Bhatt famous? Because he was a magician. Third gem, Varah Mihira. Varah Mihira was a Indian astrologer and astronomer. What is the difference between astrology and astronomy? Astronomy, you study stars and sky movement, whereas in astrology it involves predicting future. I mean it is science. This is science, whereas this is some part of mythology, myth, astrology. So Varah Mihira was a Indian astronomer and astrologer and also a mathematician. So why is he famous? You have to remember the name of the gem and the work done by them. So Varah Mihir had written a few books. He had written Panch Siddhantika and Brihat Samhita. So Panch Siddhantika is basically a book on astronomy. So he has written theorems about movement of sun and earth. So he have discussed in great detail. The fourth gem, Varah Ruchi. So why was he famous? Because he was a grammarian and Sanskrit scholar. So he was a very famous grammarian, very renowned grammarian and a Sanskrit scholar. Now the next gem, we have already seen 4 gems. The 5th gem was Amar Simha. So why was Amar Simha famous? He was famous because he was a famous scholar who wrote the first Sanskrit dictionary known as Amarkosh. Please understand something. Sanskrit was not the language spoken by masses. Sanskrit was spoken by royal people, king and his immediate associates, whereas the common public, they used to speak languages such as Prakrit, Pali. So that's why dictionary was needed. So Amar Sinha is credited with creating the first dictionary of Sanskrit, and he was part of the Navratna team of Vikramaditya. The next Navratna is Dhanvantari. So Dhanvantari was a physician. Who is a physician? He is a doctor. So Dhanvantri, ancient physician. The seventh gem was Kahapanak. So Kahapanak is also known as Shahpanak. He was a astrologer, astrology. That means telling your future, predicting your future, giving you gems to wear. So all those stuff. The next gem was Shanku. Shanku was a great architect and author of Shilp Shastra. So Shilp Shastra is basically a book on architecture. Architecture. And today also in Hindi, if you see in your geometry box, you have these kind of triangular plastic scales. So this is today also in Hindi it is known as Shanku, Trishanku. So in Hindi this is referred to as Trishanku. So those of you who are from Hindi belt, they can immediately relate that Shanku must be related to architecture, because today also instruments of architecture are named after him, Shanku, Trishanku. So Shilp Shastra, basically a book on architecture. The next gem or the ninth gem was Harisena. So Harisena was a poet. And why is Harisena known? Because it is Harisena who created Allahabad inscription. Allahabad inscription. He is the court poet of Samudragupta, but he also continued with Vikramaditya, Chandragupta II, because Chandragupta II is the son of Samudragupta. Next ruler is Kumargupta. So Kumargupta was the son and successor of Chandragupta II, and his reign was marked by general peace and prosperity. That means no battle were fought, no attack was made. So peace and tranquility. Now this is the most famous piece of information about Kumargupta, that he laid the foundation of Nalanda University. Nalanda University. So there are very famous ancient universities of India. One was Taxila. So Taxila is actually, even 1,000 years older than Nalanda University. So Nalanda University got founded somewhere in 5th century AD, and it was founded by Kumargupta. Where is Nalanda University situated? It is situated in state of Bihar, about 100 to 120 kilometers from capital city of Patna. So Nalanda University was constructed on the orders of Kumargupta. Now why else is Kumargupta known? A branch of Huns from Central Asia, Central Asian tribe. Central Asia, what do you mean by Central Asia? Countries such as Turkmenistan, all these Tan countries, Uzbekistan, Turkestan, so Central Asia. So one such tribe known as Hun, they started to come to India when Kumargupta was ruling. Before that, their existence was not known. So it was during the time period of Kumargupta that these people started to come or started to make preparations for invading India by crossing the Hindu Kush mountains. So Hindu Kush mountains. So this is Kashmir. So here this Kashmir is guarded by a mountain range, Hindu Kush. So they used to cross this mountain and enter into India. Huns from Central Asia. But it was his successor Skandagupta who really faced the Hun invasion. So during Kumargupta's time, this has just begun. This has not taken great shape. That's why there was general peace and prosperity. That means Huns have not become very dangerous during Kumargupta's time period, but his successor Skandagupta have to face Hun attack again and again. So let's understand about his successor Skandagupta. So Skandagupta is known for the fact that he defended India against barbaric Hun tribes. Already Huns had started to come to India during his father's lifetime. His father was Kumargupta. Huns were a group of horse-riding barbaric tribes living in Central Asia. So Huns, they were basically horse riding. So this horse riding is what created the difference, because India does not have high quality horses, whereas Central Asia, they produce very high quality horses. So those people used to travel on their horses, and that's why they could easily dominate over Indian rulers, because horse sitting on a horse give you agility, gives you more advantage. But this guy Skandgupt, he still managed to defeat Huns. So he defeated Huns so badly that they did not dare to challenge the Guptas ever again. That means Skandgupt is credited with defending India against Huns. Had these Huns tribes succeeded, we would have been following some other culture today, to be brutally honest. So Skandgupta is very respected figure in India, because Huns were not peace-loving people. They were brutal, barbaric tribes. They used to indulge in large-scale massacre. They used to attack towns and they used to kill all their population, all the inhabitants. They were very brutal. But this guy Skandgupta, he managed to defeat them, and that too so badly that never again did they attack the Gupta Empire. But that does not mean that Hun were defeated forever. They were simply waiting for another opportunity. But they did not attack Gupta Empire again. Once the Gupta Empire was over, then they, started their activities again. So Skandgupt, the most important fact, he managed to defend India against this barbaric Huns. Now the next important fact that you need to remember about Skandgupt is Skandgupt ordered the repairing of Sudarshan Lake. Sudarshan Lake. Who built Sudarshan Lake? Chandragupta Maurya built Sudarshan Lake. Why did Chandragupta Maurya build Sudarshan Lake? Because when he was king, there was a 12-year-long famine. So to combat that, he got a huge lake made in Junagadh. And Skandgupt is known to have repaired this lake. So this lake was almost 800 years old by then, because Chandragupta Maurya built this lake around 305 BC, and it is getting repaired by Skandgupt. So already it was 800 years old and was built by Chandragupta Maurya. Now let us understand that how did such a glorious empire came to an end. So following Skandgupt's death, much of the empire in northwest was overrun by Huns by 500 AD. That means, as I already told you, that Huns were afraid of Skandgupt, so they were simply waiting for the opportunity that once Skandgupt is gone, they will again attack India, and that is what happened. So following Skandgupt's death, Huns, they resumed their activities, and they managed to capture the northwest India. That means Gupta Empire gradually disintegrated. The empire disintegrated under the attacks of Hun kings Toramana and his successor Mihir Kula. You need to remember at least this name, Mihir Kul, because at least a couple of times question have been asked that Mihir Kula was the ruler of which dynasty. So he was actually a Hun king. So Mihir Kula used to attack India. The Huns were defeated and driven out of India in 528 by King Yasodharman from Malwa. Now please understand, Malwa was also under control of, Malwa means Madhya Pradesh. So Malwa was also controlled by Guptas only. So the Hun people, they have captured Malwa as well. That means understand, entire West India was under their control. But gradually another powerful force, King Yashovardhan, Yasodhar Dharman. So he did not belong to Gupta dynasty, but he was an independent ruler. So he was an independent ruler from Malwa. So he finally managed to expel the Huns out of Malwa. Vishnu Gupta is believed to be the last ruler. So you have to remember this. Last ruler of Gupta dynasty, Vishnu Gupta. So what are the other remarkable achievements of this dynasty? So this is a very important section because you can expect each fact can generate a question. So Vishnu Sarma composed Panchatantra. So this period, Gupta period, is known as Golden Age. So much cultural achievement have been, so much have been achieved culturally during this time. So what are those cultural achievements? That is what we are discussing now. So many great literary sources or literary pieces were created during that time. So let's see that. Vishnu Sarma composed Panchatantra. So Panchatantra is basically a storybook of kids containing moral stories. Shudrak wrote Mrichkatikam. So Mrichkatikam is a famous play. You have to remember all this. Nothing written on this page can be ignored. So Shudrak wrote Mrichkatikam. There was another writer, Vishak Dutt. He wrote Mudra Rakshas. All these are plays, natak. So you write and then you enact. Now great mathematician Aryabhat. So Aryabhat also lived during this time only. But please remember, Aryabhat is not part of Navratna. He was not part of Navratna because Navratna was accumulated by Chandragupta II or Vikramaditya, whereas Aryabhat did not live at the same time of Chandragupta. So he came after the 9 James. But still he was present, or he is part of Gupta period only. So great mathematician Aryabhat gave the concept of zero and pi. So all this was happening during Gupta period. Aryabhat wrote Surya Siddhant on astronomy. Aryabhat. There is another famous book of this period, Pancha Siddhantika. Pancha Siddhantika, that is written by Varah Mihir, whereas Aryabhat wrote Surya Siddhant. So please learn to make a difference of these two. Another great book, Sushruta wrote Sushrut Samhita. So this is a book on surgery. So this is an ancient book of surgery, Sushrut Samhita. So the name of the author, Sushrut Samhita. So these are the literary or cultural achievements of the golden age of India, which is Gupta period. Iron Pillar of Mehrauli belongs to this period. And Iron Pillar of Mehrauli talks about a king known as Chandra. So there is a king mentioned in this pillar. King's name is Chandra. And that king is Chandragupta I. So please remember, who ordered the building of Iron Pillar of Mehrauli? It was Chandragupta I. So you have to remember all these facts. You cannot miss out on any of these. So that is pretty much you need to know about this period, Gupta period. So next time, next video, next topic. See you then.